Ted. Buffy's mom brings home a new boyfriend who turns out to be even cooler than he seems at first.
We open with Willow and Xander talking about Captain and Tennille, which really seemed like the writers speaking, not these two characters.
They mention that Spike and Drusilla are out of the picture, and that the Tarakan contract is off, according to Angel. I'm glad they actually brought it up. When they arrive at Buffy's house, she finds her mom making out with Jack Tripper, who, after countless accusations of sexual misconduct, is now going by the alias Ted, and working as a software salesman.
Ted is played by John Ritter, who is known for Three's Company. I always forget he was in It. And the spin-off, where that girl's biggest fear is big dogs, Clifford.
Buffy's mom says that she's been hanging out with him for a while at work, and Buffy doesn't seem to like him for no particular reason.
I wouldn't say for no particular reason. She has her teen parental issues going on, so I could see her perspective at this point.
But Willow and Xander seem to like him immediately due to his access to advanced computer technology and the ability to make pizza.
Later, Buffy takes out her frustration on a vampire. Giles was uneasy because she was beating him up more than usual, but the intent is to kill them. That's the end result. It's not like they have to be nice to them before they murder them. If anything, he should have been happy that she was taking her job seriously for once, instead of making dumb quips as she's doing it.
I liked how the music was exciting and epic, even when Giles is telling her to just finish it already.
It's staking time, really, don't you think?
Buffy finally lets on that she's upset about Ted, but she still doesn't give a specific reason why.
She's convinced that Ted is hiding something, despite having no reason other than her own instinct.
And Willow and Xander even tell her there is no reason not to like him.
And Ted, who's at the school to work on the computers, invites them all to mini-golf that weekend.
Giles visits Miss Calendar, who tells him she still needs more time and space.
Later, Buffy is patching Angel up from the previous episode where he was stapled to a board or whatever that was, and she's expressing her frustration about Ted.
And he basically tells her he doesn't care.
So you're going to talk about something else at some point?
She finally admits that she doesn't have a valid reason not to like him.
And in the end, she finally decides to give Ted a chance.
And Angel again shows that he doesn't care by literally ending the conversation.
Do I have to like him?
Kiss me.
At mini-golf, Buffy is dressed as impractically as possible.
She plays mini-golf the way I do, and the results are the same.
Watch those elbows. Oh, bad luck, little lady.
So this was a very relatable scene.
Ted does make some slightly creepy comments.
So, Buffy, I bet the boys are lined up around the block trying to get a date with you.
But the thing that upsets Buffy is that he expects her to play by the rules, which is how games work. She still tries to cheat, and when he catches her, she decides to be a bitch about it.
Okay, so find my score or whatever.
I think you're missing the point here, little lady.
And an angry Ted threatens to slap her.
So now Buffy has an actual reason to not like him, and it was all because of her own behavior. And of course, no one else saw it.
Buffy tells Joyce what happened, and she just kind of brushes it off.
And points out how immaturely she is acting.
But all Buffy said was he threatened her. If she had been more clear, that might have gotten her mom to take more action.
Yeah, given the context of how she's been acting and everything, I don't blame her mom for not believing her very generic comment.
I think you're being a little too harsh, but I get where you're coming from.
That tells me I'm probably not being harsh enough, so I'll try to step it up from here on. Later, Buffy asks Willow to investigate Ted. Cordelia walks by, and Xander tries to compliment her, which pisses her off. And when he goes over to talk to her, they end up going off to make out again.
Buffy goes to Ted's office. She talks to one of his colleagues, who reveals that Ted has already planned a wedding.
And when she finds a photo of her mom at Ted's desk, ominous music plays when she sees that she has been folded out of the photo. But how else was he going to get it into that frame? That didn't make any sense.
Really? You're going to nitpick that much?
It was dumb. Well, the ominousness, because it was like he folded her over, but she wouldn't have fit in the frame.
I think you're reading too far into this one.
I know you're going to give this one an A. I can already tell.
That night at dinner, Buffy asks if they're engaged.
And Ted says he was planning on asking the question soon, and Buffy very maturely says,
I'd feel like killing myself.
She asks to be excused, and her mom sends her to her room, because that's what you do with people that act like children.
All right. But she doesn't go to her room. She goes vampire hunting, but she can't find any. because it's not the beginning of the episode, because that usually seems the time when she's attacked.
And when she comes back, she finds Ted sitting in her room, his face comically in shadow. We already know what he looks like. This doesn't make him look scary.
Turns out he has read her diary,
in which she has written about being the Slayer. What an idiot. Why would she write about that? Other than the snooping, I'm more and more on Ted's side all the time.
He reads it as her being mentally unstable and threatens to tell her mom if she doesn't shape up to his expectations.
And he finally ends up smacking her, so she smacks him back, and her mom comes up to find them fighting. She eventually knocks him down the stairs, and Joyce says that he is dead. After a commercial break, Ted's body is being taken away on a stretcher, and for some reason there are police everywhere.
Buffy's story doesn't really hold up.
Buffy's mom tells them that Ted fell, but Buffy surprisingly admits that she hit him.
At the police station, the detective doesn't really seem to buy her story.
And he acts like a cartoon. From what we've seen so far, that appears to be a requirement to be on the Sunnydale police force.
And the next day at school,
Buffy is depressed about having violently murdered a guy.
And very self-conscious because it's clear that everyone is talking about it.
The police are investigating, but they apparently don't find Giles' huge stash of weapons. And instead of talking to Giles about it, Buffy just storms off. When the others discuss the situation, Giles seems to be the only one taking the fact that she killed a person seriously.
The rest of them are dead set on determining that something was wrong with Ted and Buffy was justified in what she did.
As if finding out that the person you murdered had done something wrong that you weren't even aware of at the time somehow justifies it. And they act like it's the first time Buffy has killed someone, but she did slice that guy's throat a couple of episodes ago too. I guess she just didn't mention it and left his body out there on the ice rink. I also thought it was insulting that they're constantly trying to help Buffy here, and they don't seem to care about the fact that she apparently killed a guy that they supposedly liked.
Later that night, Giles is interim slaying.
Because until Buffy gets over having murdered someone, quote, there is no Slayer. I guess he forgot about Kendra.
He's approached by Calendar, who's there to apologize for pushing him away so strongly earlier, but they're attacked by a vampire.
And I wondered how she knew where he would be anyway, walking around at night.
She accidentally shoots Giles with a crossbow, which I thought was pretty funny.
But he manages to pull the bolt out and stab the vampire with it.
Buffy is confronted by Ted in her room, who is not dead because he's a robot. Of course he is. And of course, as soon as it's revealed that he's a robot, he starts making a bunch of robot noises and robot movements.
You're gonna find a hell of a day. Makes you feel like you're 18 again. That I don't like being disobeyed.
And even though he starts malfunctioning, he still knocks her out easily when he hears Joyce coming. Meanwhile, the gang is doing their research, and Willow is sad that she can't find anything bad about him, not because it means an innocent man was killed, but because it means the person who did it will be punished by the law.
During this, Xander's eating the cookies that Ted made earlier.
And he starts acting overly cheerful and carefree, which is supposed to seem unusual even though he's been making dumb jokes all the time, no matter what's going on.
And in particular about food in this episode.
Willow analyzes the cookies and finds a tranquilizer.
Since it was the 90s, I half expected her to put it in the disc tray, push it into the computer. And Cordelia finds out that Ted has previous marriages that he didn't tell anybody about.
Going back decades. They finally go to Ted's house, and they act like it was so hard to find his address, but I would think his workplace would have it, the police would know by now, and they probably could have just asked Buffy's mom, who they don't seem to have talked to at all during all of this, about Buffy or about the fact that she just lost her boyfriend. I thought that was a little weird.
They find a secret room in the floor that is in 50s decor and also contains his dead wives.
Ted reunites with Joyce, and he has a surprisingly plausible explanation as to his reappearance, I thought.
Yeah, but he said he was dead for 6 minutes and then was unconscious for a whole day. That would mean he would have had to get from Buffy's house to the morgue in 6 minutes, otherwise somebody probably would have noticed him breathing or something in the interim period.
Yeah, that's a good point. I forgot you were a doctor.
Only by Star Trek standards.
He starts acting weird again, and Joyce starts getting uncomfortable, so he knocks her out.
He's going to take her to the 50s room, but Buffy stops him and they have a fight.
And she hits him with a frying pan and turns him into Robot Two-Face. And after a couple more hits, he stays down. An indeterminate amount of time later, Buffy and her mom are sitting on the porch, casually discussing that things didn't go as well as they'd hoped.
And then at school, Xander explains that Ted was a real person who built a better version of himself for his wife.
Which is good, because up until then I had just assumed that the writers hadn't come up with an explanation for anything.
So he kept his wife in a secret room until she died, but then kept doing it over and over again.
And they're about to walk into the library, but decide not to because Giles and Miss Calendar are making out. Ted. Overall?
I was really ready to give this one a high grade until about 2/3 of the way through. This would have been a way better episode if Ted was not a robot, and not just because it was stupid. The build-up to everything before his death was really good, and the aftermath of Buffy having killed a normal person was a huge opportunity to expand in any number of directions. I was looking forward to the implications of Buffy having killed a normal person, not only how it would weigh on her conscience, but how the other characters would then treat her. It was a potential huge character moment that got roboticized. I was actually very engaged up to that point.
Wow. Are you sure we watched the same episode?
I thought it would have been very good to have that weighing on her conscience in subsequent episodes and always be afraid of doing it again. Do you disagree?
No, I don't disagree with that. I just disagree that it was good up to that point.
It was very disappointing to fall into a subpar Monster of the Week episode that, as expected, followed the formula of past episodes and just gets thrown away at the end with a bunch of loose ends in a bad way. I'm glad that Giles and Calendar address the stuff that happened in the Dark Age, and that Angel is still recovering from his earlier stuff in What's My Line. I think it's stupid that Buffy chronicles all the shit she does in a diary that anybody can pick up. If any monster took it, it would be really easy to get inside her head and just do whatever. And there was no wrap-up with what happened to Ted's body, other than some joke about Willow having some parts. I thought it was weird that Joyce didn't have more questions, because if a Terminator robot showed up one day and was taken away the next day, I probably wouldn't just shrug it off.
Yeah, and one that you were in a serious relationship with.
Yeah, she seemed really well adjusted after the whole thing. And what about the police? They didn't have more questions for the two of them? The last third just destroyed this one for me. I gave it a D+.
Wow, okay. Can't believe you like this one so much.
Like I said, I liked the early stuff. I liked the implications of what was going to happen until Robo-Ted showed up.
I gave this episode an F.
Oof!
This episode made me feel like I was back in Season 1, in the lowest point of the series so far. It should have been easy to show reasons for Buffy not wanting her mom to date someone, but instead of showing us why she didn't like that idea, they just had her act like a child the entire way through. And her friends were more worried about clearing her name than being bothered by the fact that she had seemingly killed someone, or that it was someone they knew and supposedly liked. That should have been a very weighty idea, but the episode completely dropped the ball. And Buffy never tried to talk to Angel about it, which was weird, especially given that he knows what it's like having killed someone. But even Giles had his own past mistakes brought up without anything resulting from it, or any real connections being drawn to Buffy. Any opportunities for character development in the entire episode were not only thrown aside, but in Buffy's case, served to make her seem much stupider and less mature than anything else so far. And she already seemed pretty immature sometimes. When it comes to Ted, the idea, execution, and explanation were all pretty dumb, and the episode wrapped up in a way that made the trauma that Buffy and her mother went through feel like it never happened. This was an episode that I would not only recommend people skip, but one that I would actively tell people to avoid, even if they're not even watching this show, just in case. Easily one of the worst episodes so far, in my opinion.